everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Stonesy Reads. We're doing page 42 to 60. We are on chapter 6, hello. And we are going to get to chapter 8 today. Not going to go through it, we're just going to get to it. So, yeah, about 18 pages. It shouldn't be that bad, but still. I've done the math off camera and we're going to be doing about 11 episodes. So yeah, like I said, in 10 days, or 9 days now. This book will be over, so yeah, let's get into it. And I think by just reading the first sentence to myself in my head, we're done listening to the new guy, and we're now going back to the harder names like Bungus. So let's begin. I'm sorry if I say the word Kritten. The name Kritten is kitten. I'm just not used to say Kritten. So yeah, sorry. A minute 30 already in, and let's get into this. Chapter 6. Hello. You have failed me for the last time, Kritten. The great Bungus stormed out to the blackstone chair, as they like to refer to their throne, and drew their golden axe, brandishing it before themselves. No more words. All that's left for you is doom. Kritten cringed away, retreating back toward the back room. It seemed unlikely that Bungus would actually smack down on their most important advisors on the spot. But the Piglin ruler had done stranger things before. Keeping their temper in check was not one of Bungus' strongest traits. I did everything you asked. I tried everything I could think of. It's no use. Then we have no use for you. Yeah, get out of here, and don't ever come back. Kritten blanched at the prospect of being booted from the bastion, and having to make their way through the nether on their own. You should just squash me now. It would be faster and less miserable than wandering the waste alone. Bungus moved toward Kritten, keeping the axe between them and forcing them into a corner. As Bungus drew closer, Kritten eyed the guards at the exit, looking at the means of escape. They weren't looking at Bungus and Kritten at all. In fact, they were taking great pains not to look at them in fear of the great Bungus' anger coming forth at them instead. Come here then, Bungus said. I can help you get rid of that living problem if you have right now. Well, under normal circumstances, Kritten might have just stayed in his room with Bungus and taking their lumps. But the look in Bungus' eyes was absolutely furious. If Kritten wanted to go through this, they needed to leave, now. Kritten did the one thing that Bungus is expecting at all. They charged straight at him and kicked the brute in the knee. Bungus dropped their golden axe and clutched at their kneecap in a howl of pain. The guards rushed into the doorway to see what was happening. When they saw Bungus curled up on the floor and yowling, they rushed to the leader's side to see if he could help. Kritten took advantage of the moment and flee. An instant later, they knew they were through the doorway into the bastion proper, looking for somewhere to hide. A shadow alarm went up in the throne room, though, which meant that nowhere entire complex would be safe. If they found Kritten, the best advisor would hope for was to be thrown out into the nether as something not quite as high as the bastion's tallest tower. As much as paying Kritten to admit it, the best choice for their future would be to leave the bastion via the front door. Under their own power, being banished into the nether to survive all alone would be bad enough, but trying to do so with broken legs would be impossible. Kritten sculled through the halls of the bastion, stealing everything they could find, and they thought it might help them once they were on their own. Food for sure, a bit of wrapped fungus, which could be used to keep any roaming hoglins away, some nether wart, which had so many uses, especially for a piglin as smart as Kritten, a heavy sack full of gold, and a golden axe that they pilfered from Ubgub's private quarters. Not that they knew how to use one well. Kritten was managed to rise high among the piglins by being smart. Most piglins seem, to Kritten at least, to care only about power. They like to bully one another by means of raw strength and viciousness. And the biggest bully of them all got to be in charge, at least until a bigger bully came along. Brute force mattered to them more than anything else, but not to Kritten. The advisor was short and small, not at all good at even being the most popular piglin weapon, the crossbow. All of those things combined definitely ruled out Kritten using muscle to get their way. The only thing they left for them had been their brain, and they'd taken a great pains to study hard and guess them well to keep them sharper than any blade. Till today, that had seemed like a wonderful strategy. Since Kritten couldn't boss around the other piglins by force of their arms, they opted to find a way back a gigantic piglin instead. Before Kritten had followed Bungus, a brute had not had any ambitions beyond beating up other piglins and taking their food. With Kritten's guidance, though, Bungus had gone from simple bully to the ruler of the entire bastion and all the piglins in it. For a long time, Bungus had been grateful to Kritten for all the help. The brute knew that they never would have gotten so far without having such a clever advisor behind them. But now that they reached the top of the piglin heap, the responsibilities of leadership had started to outweigh the benefits, and Bungus' gratitude had faded fast. Bungus' thankfulness had morphed into suspicion, and now transformed into outright hostility. Kritten didn't blame Bungus for this. Instead, they took the blame for doing such a poor job in imagining how this could have happened. They should have predicted it and worked their way to the top to stop it from happening, or for replacing Bungus before it got to this point. That wasn't entirely true, though. There's one other Piglin whom Kritten was responsible for Bungus' awful change in attitude, Ubgub. As Bungus' second in command, Ubgub has always been pouring poison into Kritten into the leader's ear. They clearly wanted to get rid of Bungus and take over ruling in the Bastion instead, but Kritten has always stood in the way of that. While driving Bungus to fit with warnings and complaints, Ubgub has steered the blame for these issues straight to Kritten, even if Kritten was actually entirely blameless. Unfortunately, Kritten had figured out in time to stop it from happening. Now Kritten wondered if maybe Ubgub wasn't a lot smarter than he appeared. Maybe they, not in terms of book learning or research, but in regard to the base Piglin cunning. Kritten was going to have to rethink their own strategy for how to deal with such things, if they managed to survive this. Having gathered everything they could manage to carry, if not everything they might actually need, Kritten made their way to the Bastion's front doors. Bungus' bellowing still echoed through the halls, and everyone that Kritten saw just pressed right past them on their way to the throne room to see what the commotion could possibly be about. No one tried to stop them at all, at least not until they actually reached the gates. Ubgub stood there waiting for them, arms crossed in front of them. Master Piglin blocked the way out entirely, and then they saw Kritten and sneered at him and asked, "Where do you think you're going?" "I'm just following orders," Kritten lied, happy they tucked Ubgub's axe away in their pack. "I wasn't able to solve it, every last problem with a great and powerful Bungus, so I've been banished from the Bastion." Ubgub looked Kritten up and down, checking out all the things they were carrying with them. "And Bungus gave you all the gear as a parting gift?" Kritten snorted at Ubgub for being stupid, and implied that the great Bungus has done exactly that, given an advisor all these things to get rid of him. "You think it's so simple, just to get rid of me? Like I don't know all these secrets that the great Bungus would rather not get out. Our great ruler might hate me right now, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to respect me." Ubgub raised eyebrows, reluctantly impressed. "I didn't think you had it in you. I'm full of all sorts of surprises." Kritten pushed past Ubgub. The brute actually stood aside. Kritten wasn't sure if it was out of fear, respect, or just simple relief that they finally triumphed over the greatest rival with Bungus' attention and influence. Either way, Ubgub got out of the way of Critten's pass. The advisors strode out of the Bastion like they owned the place, that would one day be back to reclaim for the Piglins that were holding it for them. And when someone who actually knew the truth about how Kritten had left Great Bungus' presence called out for the Rampers to stop his action. "Is that Kritten? Stop him! The Great Bungus wants him dead." Kritten didn't even glance back as he took on Ubgub's face. They started running like they were never going to stop. Chapter 7. On the Run. As Kritten sprinted away from the Bastions, arrows arched out from the ramparts and fell around him. Whether by intention or luck, not one of them hit the advisor, although one of them came close enough to poke a hole in their pack. Kritten didn't try to dodge arrows, which would have been next to impossible for him anyhow. They just kept their head down and their nose pointed forward and ran as fast as their little legs could take them. Not for the first time in their life, Kritten wished they were bigger. Being smart was wonderful, but they would have been willing to trade a bit of their brains for longer, faster legs at the moment. And the fact that Kritten was outside the Bastion alone in the Nether would normally have terrified them, but being inside the Bastion with all the other Piglins would have been much worse. It wasn't until they were well out of bow shot from the Bastion that it even occurred to them that they should be afraid. Kritten needed to find some sort of shelter as fast as they could, and not just a place to hide from Bungus' underlings. There were so many mobs in the Nether that would try to kill them on sight. The best defense against them was not to be seen in the first place. The great Bungus' Bastion, well, the one that they had commanded with Critten's help, was one of the best bastions in the area. This was situated in the Crimson Forest, which offered it more protection than the open plains of the Nether Wastes could ever manage. The towering blood-red fungi that made up the bulk of the forest gave Kritten lots of places to hide from arrows, and the soft glow of the shroom lights high up in the fungi made it easy to navigate through the dark red fog that pervaded the place. The only trick was to make sure that nothing was hiding behind those gigantic fungi to pounce out at them too. Unfortunately, Kritten had taken the time to scout the area around the Bastion long before this. Back in then the idea had been to figure out what kind of threats might reside close to the Bastion so that the Piglins could figure out how to get rid of them. In the back of their mind, though, Kritten had also been plotting out possible ways to escape from the Bastion should everything go bad. To their shame, Kritten had actually not thought that the Great Bungus would ever turn against them. After all, Kritten had engineered Bungus' rise to power. The leader depended on an advisor like Kritten, and wasn't entirely lost without them. In the end, though, Bungus hadn't seen it that way, had they? Perhaps Kritten had let their ego get in their way. They gotten too comfortable with the chambers of their Bastion, too used to the life on top of the Piglin heap. They spent too much time watching for the threats outside the bastions that they did not bother looking for the threats from within. At least Kritten had spotted a good hiding place all those months ago, a place that was both outside of the bastion and offered at least little protection from other non-Piglin threats. Now all they needed to do was reach it. Doing that didn't turn out to be hard. The commotion at the bastion was attracted the attention of most of the other mods in the area, and they had come to mill around the place to see what was happening. From long practice, they stayed just out of bowshot of the ramparts, but that didn't stop Piglin stationed there trying their luck with a few arrows anyhow. That worked in Critten's favor, as it kept attention of those mobs in the bastion while the advisors scrambled to find their hidden hiding spot. Hoping that it was still there, when they found it, a hole in the ground hidden by a large square of giant fungus stumps. They dove into it at not a sigh of relief until they made sure nothing else had decided to claim it as their den in the meantime. It wasn't until then that Kritten unclenched enough to feel their heart trying to beat through their chest. They'd been too much in a panic to worry about anything but imminent death, till just now. The effort with keeping their head together the whole time had been exhausting. They closed their eyes for what they told themselves would only be a short moment. While they rested nestled in the golden gear, and Kritten started to plan out what the next steps might be. They couldn't just move out this little cave and live here. Eventually they ran out of food and water, and they'd be forced to go into the open. When that happened, they would be better off if they had a place to go. There were other piglins out there in the nether. Kritten knew some of them had bastions too, ones that had been entirely destroyed by the mightiest of roving mobs. Maybe Kritten would find one of them and ask them to take them in. Most of the piglins in the area, especially the leaders, knew that Kritten was the Great Bungus's advisor. Kritten wondered if they'd be able to trade on for the big kindness from those piglins. The Great Advisor grunted the idea of the piglins being kind. They wouldn't do it out of the non-existent goodness of their hearts. Kritten would have to offer them something in return, something of value, a lot of value, like an entire hill's worth of gold, which they would then just steal from them. The nearest clan seemed fond of tossing up poorly built structures and then watching them fall down. Maybe Kritten could help them keep those places standing, but the advisor wasn't sure the clan would appreciate that. The next closest clan had taken such a shine to the Crimson Force's gigantic fungi that they almost seemed to worship them. Unfortunately, the part of that worship involved never cleaning themselves, and Critten's nose was too sensitive to tolerate that. Another clan roamed through the region, riding hoglins through the forest and place to place like nomads. The real trick would be finding them, and even when Kritten had grown used to having real roof overhead, piglins were greedy creatures. But the moment they saw Kritten, they would know exactly how desperate the advisor had to be. The things Kritten just swiped on their way out of the Great Bungus Bastion wouldn't be enough. The gold Kritten was carrying might get them an audience to plead their case, but it would be little to buy them a home. They would have to offer that prospective piglin leader something more. Something like the Great Bungus. Kritten knew Bungus backward and forward, their strengths and their weaknesses, every last bit of their bastion. If some ambiguous piglin leader wanted to attack the bastion with an eye toward taking it from Bungus, the information Kritten would offer them would be invaluable. Instead of just offering a sack of gold, Kritten would be able to provide them with all of Bungus's gold, every bit of it. In fact, Kritten might be able to parlay that information into becoming the attacker's advisor, which would mean being restored to place of honor and power in Bungus's very bastion. Kritten would then return the rightful place that they had earned through all their hard work and cunning. The only difference would be that there would be someone other than Bungus in charge, and that time around Kritten wouldn't make same mistakes. They would be the lookout and the treachery from within. They take steps to make sure that no one else could take their position away from them ever again. All they had to do was the right piglin to make it happen. They nodded off with a warm and comforted thought of their head. They were awakened not much later by someone grabbing them by the front of their shirt and hauling them bodily into the hiding hole. The attacker threw them as boulders that had hidden in the place of the casual view, and the impact of the ground knocked the wind out of Kritten. As they lay in the dirt, struggling to catch their breath, the attacker vaulted on those same boulders and landed right in front of him, looming over the advisor with a shadow blocking out the sky. It was Ugub, and they were laughing. The brute leaned in over Kritten and stabbed a thick thing into the advisor's chest. "You think you're smart, don't you? Smarter than any other piglin? Smarter than the Great Bungus? Even smarter than me? No, wait. Ugub wasn't done talking. Well, maybe you are, but you're stupid too. If you were smart, you wouldn't have run all the way away, not stopped here. Please." Kritten had more to say, but Ugub scooped them up in the brutal grass and started hauling them away while continuing to berate them. "If you were really smart, you wouldn't have left the trail that led me right here, and you wouldn't be so weak that I'd drag you back." Kritten didn't believe that Ugub was a tracker of any skill. In fact, the brute had a hard time figuring out how to get around the bastion on most days. If it was enough to shock that Ugub had even left the bastion to go out to Kritten, much less the brute having actually found them. But how? Ugub shook the rest of the words right out of Critten's mouth. and then turned the advisor upside down so that he could see the brute had met. With their head hovering right over the ground, the advisor couldn't help but see a long pieces of netherwort dribbled into the dirt that ran right over the path they had taken in their highway. Kritten stood in and quite understand how the line had gotten there. What had betrayed him? The thought had taken measures to be careful. They certainly hadn't left such a trail behind them, right? That's when the bit of the never trembled out of Critten's punctured back and into the face, and the advisor realized what had happened. The arrow that pierced Critten's back as they were fleeing from the bastion had punctured the sack of netherwort they had swiped. Pieces of the netherwort had spilled out behind them, and they raced away, leaving a trail behind them that even someone as thick-headed as Ubgub would follow. Kritten wanted to smack the hand into the forehead for not having noticed this before it was far too late, but they were too discombobulated to manage it. That's only worse once Ubgub heard Kritten gasp in revelation. Laughing out loud, the brute swung Kritten around them like their ankles between the drag and the advisor along instead. He means to take extra care of the light and thumping Critten's head over every rock, bump, and fallen log that he could find in Crimson Forest. What an idiot you are, Ubgub said. The problem isn't that you're smart. Next to most of us Piglins, you might be a genius. The funny part is that you think you're smarter than you actually are. The brute chortled at that, but Kritten couldn't summon up enough wind to respond due to the constant thumping of their skull against the ground. They couldn't only listen to that awful laugh. Eventually, Ubgub came to an abrupt stop. This should do. What's happening? By this point, Kritten had been battered near a sentence. Where are we? It didn't look like the bastion anywhere near it. Kritten had expected Ubgub to track them back in front of the great bungus to hear the leader pronounce the punishment. At this point, Kritten would have just been surprised if it meant execution. After all, if Bungus would only wanted Kritten banished from the bastion, the advisor's escape from the place had already taken care of that. I'm not giving you another chance to calm down, Bungus, and talk your way out of your punishment, Ubgub said. You got away that too many times. Not today. With that, Ubgub hauled Kritten up over his head. From this vantage point, the advisor could see that they stood on the edge of a pit, where the edge of Crimson Forest where it began to give away, a sprawling horror of the nether waste. Darkness swallowed the unseen bottom of it, but it seemed deep enough to fall in would be fatal, much less throwing into it. Today this all ends, Ubgub said, and so do you. No, Kritten shouted. No, no, no. They kept shouting it all the way down. Chapter 8. Finding the Portal. Kritten had no idea how much later it would be when they awakened. They only knew in the dark where they were, which was unusual for the nether. There was most places and continually lit by the roasting glow of lava. Kritten got up to their elbows and looked around. The last thing they remembered was sailing through the open air into the pit that had Ubgub's horrible guffaws echoing after them. Most of the easy thing was that Kritten was still alive at all. They had entirely expected to die then and there. The fact that this hadn't happened seemed like a miracle. They decided to take the time to take an inventory of their injuries and evaluate whether or not there was a chance that they might be able to crawl out of this pit, if that there were under their own power. Kritten discovered a number of bumps and bruising on their body, including a nasty knot on the back of their skull. If they had a number of cuts and scrapes as well, but the advisor's relief their bodies seemed to be intact. The most stunning thing Kritten found was a creature on which they had apparently landed. It was a broke in their fall, and if that was the case, the incredible accident would probably save Critten's life. On the other hand, it hadn't done the creature nearly as much good. Kritten rolled off and see if it survived, and was surprised to discover that, whatever it was still breathing. Kritten gazed upward and saw the shape of the hole high above them. That must be the rim of the pit into which Ubgub had hurled them. Not much light came down through it, which meant Kritten had to strain his eyes to see anything. Fortunately, it turned out that Ubgub hadn't stripped Kritten of their pack before tossing him into the pit. That had gone flying while they had tumbled into the pit, but it lay on the ground only a few feet away. Kritten crawled over the pack and fished a lantern out of it, then lit it. In its illumination, they could see that they were in a pit so much of a cave. The walls of it were too far away to be seen. There wasn't anyone, or anything else in this place, with them. At least as far as they could tell. Just the creature they landed upon. Kritten moved back to the creature and saw it was a strider. The Piglins loved striders, if only because they were the only mobs in there that didn't seem like they were about to kill everyone around them. Also, you couldn't climb on top of them and ride them anywhere, even across the hottest lava. On top of that, striders often shed strings that Piglins could use to help build crossbows and other handy things. Kritten didn't know how this particular strider had gotten down here in the pit, apparently all by itself. Maybe it had fallen in. Maybe Ubgub had tossed it in here to first see how deep the pit was. In any case, Kritten was grateful that it had been here, and perhaps a little sorry for that unceremonious tumble into the pit that had injured it. They wondered how they might help the strider. Maybe they could somehow nurse it back to health. But first they had to figure out a way out of the pit, or they would wind up dying there next to the strider anyhow. Kritten stood up, feeling every ache and bruise in their body, and they held their lantern high. The walls they would see around them were tall and steep. and they didn't seem to have an easy way out. It looked like an awful place to starve to death. Kritten walked toward one wall and decided to fall into the darkness. As they went, they saw the wall curved around them to the left, which they noticed not only because of the purplish glow that emanated around the bend. Not wanting to alert whoever might be on the other side of the bend, Kritten extinguished their lantern and waited for their eyes to adjust to the darkness. They imagined a glow. They hadn't imagined the glow. They could see it more strongly now, and they crept toward it as quietly as they could manage. As they drew closer, they heard something around the corner as well. Kritten couldn't make it out as well, but it sounded like someone talking to themselves. Kritten peered around the bend and wall and suppressed the gasps of surprise that would have certainly given them away. A purple glow was emanating an obsidian portal. Kritten had seen such portals in the past, but they never seen one actually functioning. They always stood empty, hollow inside, waiting for someone or something to activate them. Some mobs, including a fair number of piglins, like to hang around obsidian portals, hope that they might light up so they could attack whatever came through them. But Kritten had always been too busy at other duties to simply hope that something might happen at some point. Word was that an active portal led from the nether to a whole new world that worked differently from the one that Kritten knew, but it had always seemed like a ridiculous fantasy. But there now was one that was actually working, and someone was standing in front of it. Kritten knew the opportunity when they saw it. Hard was to not believe Ugga might have actually gotten them a favor by tossing them down here. Now the advisor meant to take advantage of it. They were an ex-advisor now. Perhaps a great bungus point of view, but Kritten hadn't given up their choice of career just yet. They'd find something else to take them in as advisor, or maybe they'd set themselves a new rule in the bastions and stuff ahead. If only they knew how. Ugga was right. Kritten was pretty smart, but smarts weren't enough to put a piglin in charge of bastion. Brute strength was usually a lot more helpful in that regard. Kritten's drew Ugga's stolen axe in their pack and crept up behind the lone figure as quietly as possible. The advisor's feet didn't make a single sound, and they held their breath as well. Their heart pounded so hard, though, they were surprised the person standing there was starting to swirling purple inside the obsidian portal didn't hear it. The person had their back to them. Kritten could not believe their luck. This advisor within reach of the person, though they turned around and bared their teeth at them. Kritten knew that they might get another chance, so they struck. They leaped out and tackled the person to the ground. Kritten had never seen men much of a fighter, especially not compared to the brutes like Ugga and the Great Bungus. So they were shocked when the victim bowed backward so easily. Going to the momentum grip and scramble up the person's body, put the blade of their axe in the person's throat. The great Piglin warrior would have been simply dispatched the person in a few quick shots and looted their body. But Kritten had never liked to hurt someone else, much less killed them. They hesitated instead. When they saw the person they attacked wasn't a piglin at all, it was an overworlder. Ooh. Now, ain't that spooky? Huh. I think it is, at least. Yeah. That's definitely scary. 7, 8. Okay, so we're on chapter 8. What a bargain. Okay. Just like checking. Yep. That's definitely a way to put them together. I thought they're going to go together because, like, oh, I'm banished, blah, blah, blah. This book, and a lot of books we've read, takes a lot of nice twists and turns that I never really ever suspect. It always gets me. But yep, now we're on chapter 8, What a Bargain. And we're reading page 61 to 80. Where's page 80? 80. That's a predicament. We could do 79 or 80. 85. So do I want to read 5 more, or do I want to read 2 less? Let's say 77. And then the next day we're going to read a lot, and then yeah. But yeah. So that's going to be that, and that's going to be fun. So yep, now we're on next time we're going to read chapter 8. And then bargain, blah, blah, blah. BARGITSEF. That's how you spell bargain, right? Don't know. I just know how to read. Not really. I don't know how to read. But yeah, definitely an interesting thing. So I guess that explains the Strider in this photo right here. So So the next question is how... So the guy on the bottom, I'm assuming, is the Great Bungus. That guy right there is the Overworlder. You have the fox, a horse, a strider, an axolotl, an allay, a bird, a bunny, and a... I want to say that was a fox, but maybe it's a wolf. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!